doesn't the red tape become another problem? Because he has to make a decision on whether fiber comes from National Theatre to UBC, and it has to come from him to the director, to the commissioner, to the PS, to the undersecretary. And by the time fiber that is supposed to just show African Cup of Nations is coming here.
You see, in Dubai, every area has a very huge function to celebrate achievements of public enterprises. They give them targets. They're supposed to compete with private companies. When they surpass those targets, there is always a function. I've attended 2 of them. They reward them, but also the MDs of these parastatals are moved from one parastatal to another depending on their performance. In Uganda here, the government itself has no target. The ministers have no target, and really you must be sympathetic that you give NRM ministers targets, you will not sleep. They are not people that you can give targets. They are just there. So if government has no target to deliver, and because I keep saying, and you'll excuse me, UBC here, if you had been transferred from the Ministry of National Guidance, you will be doing far, far much better. Many of you guys who are working here, we went to school together. Some of you were the best, but they bring you here. One time I was watching news. You have Museveni first, followed by his wife, and then Prime Minister. What? Stories that have no news value, but because you work for a government entity, so they will tell you how the news must be structured. If they allowed you to go and compete with the private media, you will be, because we are the same people. I don't think you become stupid because you work at UBC. But the environment under which you work, the Minister for National Guidance will call. This is the story we want of Mama. Now today she was doing this. Now Tata is doing this. So the red tape will remain. Because Museveni ministers cannot do anything. They first do calculation. Is the president happy with this? You will not have ministers making decisions because they never make them. But also the environment, because you see, the parastatals attracted some of the best people in the market because of the way they were paying, but also because of some independence they enjoyed. Let me tell you, and I don't want anyone to be mistaken, I support rationalization because I want a costs cut, but I don't trust that the service will be delivered better. Because the motivation now, by the way, by many of these ministers, they see the budgets in the parastatals. They actually scavenging. They want the budgets to come back. They want to be the one to be making the decision for roads, for every parastatal. That is the motivation by the ministers. For the president, I don't know. Because if the same president who is duplicating, even his own government, ministries are being duplicated in State House. Every ministry has an equivalent department in State House, whether for health, whether for education, whether for everything. It cannot be the same president now saying, I want to rationalize because of duplication, because of cutting costs. His motivation, I don't know. But many of these national guidance, the motivation is to now get the budgets of parastatals and begin running them. They want to be the one to give cheats for a road. Because see the performance of ministries. Ministers who can't distribute iron sheet, now you tell them to run parastatals. It's going to be chaos.
Thank you very much, Honorable Semuju. Let me come to Honorable Mara. Honorable Semuju paints a very gloom and hopeless picture, Honorable Mara. But when you look at this idea of rationalization, he agrees with it. Yeah. The implementation is where the trick is. Is it feasible?
Thank you, Timothy. And it's quite interesting to speak after the Honorable Rosa Honorable Semuju. I think, Timothy, the question we should ask is, how did we get here? I think it's important for us to understand that. Given the fact that when NRM government came to power in 1986, they pursued a policy of privatization and liberalization. And the idea at the time was that the government should not be in the business of running companies, and you need to have a smaller government and to deal with policy issues rather than running companies. So that those policies, although largely driven by World Bank and IMF, at the time helped government to do a lot of work. Many of the government parastatals and companies were sold, and government became much smaller. But then something drastically happened. In the course of time, we were in the main being funded by IMF and World Bank. And they came up with suggestions. You know, when they come, they look at government, ministries. They say, no, but for this one to run well, we need an authority. Let's have the UNRWA to help us run do the road construction. Then they come with their money and said, for this to happen very well, let's have this entity. So over time, the government started pursuing an expansionary institutional creation, which has actually now caught up with us. So we created this multiplicity of companies and parastatals that were running parallel to the main ministries. And we could tolerate that for a long time, basically because we didn't have much crisis. The money was still flowing in. Money was still coming through. Now, if you look at the last 3 years, we experienced a COVID situation, which basically impacted our economy. And then, as a country, we said, you know what, our values are not for sale. Then we enacted the anti-homosexuality law. That, in effect, made some people very unhappy. I would give you a key statistics. This financial year, 2023-2024, which is ending in June, the budget support which we have is 2.7 trillion shillings. 2.7 trillion shillings. In the budget framework for 2024-2025, that amount has dropped from 2.7 trillion to 29 billion, almost by 98%. So the monies that we used to receive as a budget support has basically gone down. Secondly, also, the national debt keeps growing. And if you look at the discretionary expenditure that we have, for this financial year is 25.5 trillion. Projected for 2024-2025, it has fallen down to 21.7 trillion. So over 3-point-something trillion has gone through the window. So if you are seated where President Museveni is, you now begin to say, okay, where is waste? Where is clutter?
It is at his residence.
Where is duplication? And so when we came to this parliament in 2021, May, after we were sworn in, the message of rationalization started. We actually found it on. And we thought it was going to be done quickly. We are now 3 years into the same conversation. In the financial year 2024-2025, money has been allocated, 79 billion, as severance pay for those that will be affected. So this is an economics. It's no longer a political question. It is purely a budget and economic matter, where you have a budget to meet, and the president was very clear when he made the presentation at Entebbe. He said, as NRM, what we are pursuing as the main pillars is basically industrialization of Uganda. The second is commercialization of agriculture. Third, ICT, and then the fourth, services. And these are centers for wealth creation, for generating wealth. Now, what we need to do as a government is to see how best can we provide support to these centers that are creating wealth. Because for the economy to grow, we need to make sure that there's infrastructure. We need to invest in roads, invest in railways, make sure that we provide skills for the workforce that is required in the private sector. We need to connect the entities for them to function. But here it is a section, this 150-something you're talking about, you look at them and say, are they generating wealth or not? Or they are basically a consumptive sector, agencies. So for him, his argument was, if you are creating money, it's okay. But if you're just duplicating and you're not creating money, then now, in a strategic sense, for us to move forward, is that we now need to rationalize these parastatals and agencies. It's something, by the way, like Honorable Semuja said, is something that I support. During the budget framework paper discussion, as budget committee, we were receiving the reports, the sectoral reports from the committee chairs. You will find, for example, like where he seated ICT. So you'll find that this MDA has a budget for ICT. These other agencies will come, they have a separate budget for ICT. This one, like that, what the chair of the budget committee, we agreed, we said, can the clerk of the budget committee, can you combine all these monies from these MDAs and put them underneath you, under Ministry of ICT? Just to avoid, you could see duplications all over the place.
Honorable Mara,
Yes.
shouldn't we be looking at, instead of piecemeal,
Yes.
holistic rationalization?
Yes.
Honorable Semuju talked about it, government, parliament, the executive.
Yes.
Because when I do the numbers of what Honorable Semuju is talking about,
Yes.
if by 2026 we're at about 3.1 elective positions,
Yes.
and the assumption is let me put an assumption of about 42 million Ugandans. That means for every 14 Ugandans, each of them has one leader.
I totally agree with that position. This matter, in fact, when we met the president, and we were very open with the conversation. We had the conversation in Entebbe, and all these issues were raised. We said we should not only rationalize MDAs. We should also look at the size of cabinet. Do we need 81? Maybe we need less. We also looked at
86. Yes.
cabinet members are 81.
Even the president doesn't know them.
They're
He
81.
keeps calling them Nani. He doesn't know the.
Honorable Semuju, we approved the number. The number is 81. So we're saying we look at the size of cabinet. Let's look at parliament. Let's look at presidential advisors. There are 200 in numbers. And then the matter which was also raised with the president is that the worries are that it is okay for us to rationalize. But the big problem we have is that there is inefficiency in government ministries, which Honorable Semuji is raising. So if you have the ministries are clogged, they're inefficient, they are bureaucratic, they are corrupt. So how then do you now mainstream the agencies into those ministries? That's the big question that was put there. And the president indeed said, this is not only going to stop with the agencies, we are going to look at the bureaucracy, the efficiency, because this is about efficiency and effectiveness in public administration. And for example, if you, one of the things that the president pointed out, he said the highest public servant in a ministry should be the permanent secretary. But then you find below the permanent secretary, you have this person called the director. And he actually said he didn't know how they were created, how they came to be. And so below directors, you have the commissioners. So if you pick agriculture, you have maybe commissioner for fisheries, commissioner for crop science, maybe commissioner for mechanization, commissioner for animals. Now this commissioner should indeed be reporting to a PS, but they have to report to a director. So in the proposal which is coming, then the position of the directors will go. So just to answer your question, there should be a holistic outlook in terms of how we are going to rationalize. It should not stop with the MDS. We need to look at the efficiency in government ministries. And then one item which also came up, which is a money saver, is corruption in government. The IGG puts the figure at 10 trillion shillings. Now, 10 trillion shillings is humongous. And the proposal that the president is providing is that with rationalization of entities, agencies, and parastatals, we would save 1 trillion shillings. That's a lot of money. But corruption takes 10. So we now need to deal with three big items. The rationalization, which we are looking at now, of agencies. Then we need to bring in efficiencies in ministries themselves. How do we create efficiencies in ministries? And the third, we deal with corruption. So when we deal with those three, then the future is bright. If we don't deal with inefficiencies in government, we might mainstream these agencies or get rid of them. What Honorable Semuchi is warning us about is that the system will get clogged, service delivery will be poor, and one of the issues that members of parliament raised with the president was, for example, RARE. RARE was mainstreamed into the Ministry of Energy. But members of parliament who represent the electorates are saying, ever since RARE was mainstreamed, we don't feel it. Where there were poles put in place, we don't see anybody coming to connect those poles, the wires, and connect electricity to our people. So if RARE is an indicator, then we must have to be worried. There should be a sense, and we need serious people, by the way, to run government. Honorable Minister of Finance, Museveni Kasaija, was telling the president, he said, I have to run everywhere to look for money to fund the government. But the corrupt people are eating it. And he told the president, this one should not be within our government. They should not serve. So we must be able to confront the corrupt and tell them, please leave. We must have the courage to fire them and say, go away, so that the little money we have, we can effectively use it to serve the people of Uganda.
Thank you very much. Dr. Sarah, when you hear all these conversations, especially structural adjustment, and hear this rationalization, is government well-meaning in this rationalization idea that it's fronting? And when you look at it, what effects do you see?
Well, in principle, rationalization of agencies is good, and I'm sure every citizen out there supports the principle. But I think we need rationalization of government expenditure, not just agencies, because the executive seems to be excited going after the soft targets, the technical personnel. When you look at the size of government or the size of our public expenditure bill, Uganda has one of the highest size of cabinet in the world. I've not seen any country with a cabinet the size of 81 ministers. The second highest country with the number of ministers is Pakistan. But Pakistan has a population of 225 million. So they have a cabinet of 76 ministers. Among countries captured as countries with top cabinet, size of cabinet is Uganda, Pakistan, then you have North Korea with 47 ministers. You have India, 29 ministers. Indonesia, a population of 273 million, 38 ministers. India has a population of 1.3 billion. You have China, a population of 1.4 billion, 26 ministers. And so when you come to Uganda, a population of about 45 million, we have 81 ministers. We are 7 members shy of 8 football teams, meaning that the cabinet of Uganda, I know we have just come out of AFCON games, the cabinet of Uganda is 7 members shy of playing quarterfinals alone. Team A versus Team B, Team B versus, so you have a cabinet whose size can go for the quarterfinals of AFCON games.
On its own?
Yes, 81, we are just missing 7 to make 88. Those are 8 football teams. So when you look at this size of cabinet, every minister, the basics, has a pickup at home for domestic use, has a vehicle with a lead car. Those are 3 vehicles minimum. Some of them have more than 2, 3 vehicles of escorts. So look at the size a minister is moving from home to office and back. How many people do they move with? So every time a minister is on the road, it's a mobile hospital. It's a cost of a mobile hospital. So we need to look at where is taxpayers' money going. The president, during the NRM caucus meeting, spoke very well. He said that when you fail to answer strategic questions, then you create a strategic mess. And he said that when we talk of rationalization, I quote, we are talking about doing things that are rational and save money. He further went ahead to quote Adam Smith in a book of How Do Nations Create Wealth. Very fundamental issues. But what is the practice? Saving 1 trillion shillings by dealing with a soft target of technical officers, it is good for a taxpayer. But how much more money are we losing as a country? We have 85 trillion stuck at the High Court division in litigation. This is almost double the annual budget of this country is stuck in the commercial division of High Court because of challenges in the judiciary. When you come to tax exemptions, in the last financial year, we lost 2.8 trillion in tax exemptions. This is double, 3 times the money we are seeking to save in rationalization of agencies. When you come to corruption, the Inspector General of Government has said we lose 10 trillion. This is 10 times the money we are seeking to save in rationalization of agencies. Parliament and Office of the President, each of them the Office of the President spends about 2.6 billion every day.
Yeah.
How many schools are these? These are 5 schools per day. 5 seed schools. The president eats 5 seed schools every day. Parliament eats 6 seed schools every day. So for me, this is the analysis we need to put to this question of rationalization. How best can we save taxpayers' money? And the citizens need to look at Parliament. Each time Parliament is in session, we are losing 6 seed schools. What quality, the value of work they are doing, is it worth 6 seed schools in this country? Can we still do the same work at a less cost by cutting the size of Parliament? We create districts every other term. And shamelessly, even when we are borrowing to pay salaries as a country, shamelessly Parliament will create constituencies, will create districts. Government is borrowing to pay salaries. We are bankrupt. Our books of accounts do not balance. But we shall create additional administrative units. So, Mr. President, going back to the preamble of your address to caucus, how do nations create wealth? The Constitution limited the size of cabinet to 26, 23 cabinet ministers and 23 ministers of state. That would give us a total of 46 ministers in cabinet. You are at 81. You are at 8 football teams, Mr. President. What is the value of these 8 football teams of cabinet to a taxpayer? Can you go back to the constitutional threshold? That should be the first action to indicate goodwill on the side of the president. From there, can we have cabinet reduce itself to 2 MPs per district, male and female? We will hit the Sustainable Development Goal 15 on gender equality. We will hit the requirements of the African Union Constitutive Act and Agenda 2036 of the AU on gender parity. We shall also save money, and we shall have equal representation of our population dynamics in Parliament. 2 MPs, male, female per district.
Yeah, but the districts themselves will need to be
Also, they
demarcated
need to be
again.
collapsed back.
Yeah.
Most of the new districts are non-viable. They don't produce income. They don't, above 60% of our GDP, between 60 and 70, We have an economist who will provide the accurate figures of our GDP's got from Kampala, Wakisandu, Mukono.
Revenue.
Yes, revenues. So you have the bulk of these districts just consuming taxpayers' money with less or no production. What is important is service delivery to a taxpayer. We went under decentralization principle, under the slogan of taking services closer to the people. When you look at some of these agencies, like UNRWA, which work with the local governments, one would assume that they are building capacity for the local governments. So when you are taking back these agencies that build capacity, are you centralizing? Are you re-centralizing? Has the decentralization principle failed? These are the questions of the day that should be answered. So in my view, Parliament should go for the big tax, the biggest consumers of taxpayers' money in terms of public administration and cut every item by half. Then we can look at the technocrats who are in these agencies. Why are some of the agencies performing better than ministries? Because agencies work on contract with performance indicators. What are the performance indicators of public servants? The traditional public servants have a mentality of putting a jacket behind the chair and going about your business without serving the entity that employs you. That's why agencies were created, because of the laxity and the mentality of the public servants. Has this mentality changed?
Can I provide some information
Yes,
to you?
please.
I was with a commissioner in one of the ministries yesterday, and he told me that, you see, me, I earn 2.7 million shillings at my level as a commissioner.
Permanent and pension.
And I said, but those ones who are in the parastatals, they're earning 20, 30, 40 million.
So is this a power struggle?
So now he's saying that cannot feed me, cannot feed my children, cannot feed anything. So I am forced to go outside to look for.
So he's forced to hang the jacket.
Oh, he's forced to hang the jacket and go and look for something. So which means we have to look at the salary structures as well for some of these people who are going to be mainstreamed, or even the current existing public servants. Money pay is an issue.
True. That's, if we had the contract with the performance indicators in public service, at least from the senior level, going upwards to the permanent secretaries are on contracts. But
Yeah.
I know Parliament has censured some permanent secretaries and they are brought back through the technical arm. Incompetence is notwithstanding. So these are the issues we must focus on as a country.
Doctor, let's talk about the legalities. Some are by the Constitution, others are by acts of Parliament, others are by company acts or whatever legal regiment is there. How is this going to happen, especially looking at about 2,170 people that are likely to lose their jobs?
Well, the legalities will be handled through repeal. And I know the amendment bills, I've seen some of them already, like about 8 amendment bills. I think I should be presented to Parliament this week. Like the rationalization government agencies on the education sector amendment bill, internal affairs, national resources and environment sector works. These bills are ready, up to 8 bills that per sector that are merging the agencies under a particular sector. In principle, the merger of agencies is good. And the legalities will be handled by Parliament, which is our lawmaking body. But when you look at the welfare of staff, those who have chosen to join the mainstream public service, are they incorporated with their salaries and benefits?
No.
So, and at what rank are they absorbed? These are the technical issues that must be addressed. And those who have thought to retire, of course, we need a lot of money to compensate them. In principle, like I have said, the rationalization is good. In my view, if we were to rationalize these agencies, we should choose, first of all, we have non-performing agencies.